We've got one more wise legend to share with us. The serial mining entrepreneur, John Teeling, the executive chairman of Botswana Diamonds. Thank you, sir. I do, in my culture, we have to respect age. You're probably my age, but I do have to stop you when it's tea time. So apologies up front if I get to that.
He knows I'm Irish and I'll talk forever. That's his problem.
I've been warned.
Yeah. Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here. A couple of points I picked up during the day when the guy was saying he wanted to bring his wife to the DRC. I was wondering, did he intend to bring her back? Because that... It's all right. The second one was kind of serious. I'm listening all morning and we're talking about opportunities in Tanzania and various places and about hassles here and there, and you completely ignore the gorilla in the room, Zimbabwe. What? Not one mention from one person about the fabulous resources that are up the road here. Literally, a couple of hours away. Probably better than the DRC, easier accessible, everything right, and not one mention. I don't know what that means, but you as local people need to think about that. It just shows you can create an environment where nobody will go near you. I worked for 25 years, 26 years in Zimbabwe. Not even mentioned. Absolutely amazing. This is going to be a bit different. I have no slides. Firstly, why is it going to be different? Because I'm Irish. And those of you who know, Irish are always optimistic. I see opportunities everywhere. Secondly, we're an island people, which means I come from a rock in the North Atlantic, so there's nothing there. So if you want to do anything, you have to go abroad. Thirdly, I'm a money man. I'm a finance guy. I know nothing about geology, and I don't really care. In fact, I go more specifically, I don't care at all. Because I will hire the people that are needed to do it. And fourthly, much more importantly, and I'm not so sure you've got it across in the business now, I'm a prospector. I'm an early stage explorer. I don't talk to banks. I don't talk to institutions. They shouldn't give me money. What I do is not for widows and orphans or any kind of conservative investors. Just isn't. It's extremely high risk, and I hear people talking about high risk, expecting that to mean high return. Now, any of the economists in the room should be able to tell you high risk means you're going to lose your money most of the time. That's what it means, actually. It really does. Yeah, you think it's not a joke, it's serious, because you will. You will lose money most of your time. The last point is a very, very important point on what we're going to talk about is a dollar is an orphan. A dollar has no parents. A dollar has no loyalties. There is no right in the wide world why an exploration dollar should come to Zimbabwe, should come to South Africa, should come to Bolivia or any of these places. It will go where it's wanted. If you don't want it, it won't come. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. You're saying there's nobody doing exploration in South Africa. Well, think about why are they not doing exploration in South Africa? There's no money going into Zimbabwe. Just think about why it's not. It's not liked. It's not wanted. The dollar says, I can go to nicer places. There are 220 countries in the world where I can lose money. I don't have to lose it in South Africa. That's absolutely true. But that's what we do. Now, when you come to me, I'm having listened to you this morning, I'm not so sure there's a lot of money in the room that I can raise from you guys. And after I talk to you for the next 20 minutes, there's probably none. What do I do as an explorer? You've got to get your head around this. I sell mystery, not history. I sell romance, not reality. I sell blue skies, not dark clouds. And I sell hope, not hard facts. That's what exploration is. Does any of you know, well, of course, your exploration geologists say, of course I know what's 2 miles into the ground. Yeah, sure, I go drill a hole this size and I'm going to hit exactly that. Codswallop. Nobody knows, with the best will in the world. You have all these multiple techniques going around, and I know there are some expert technicians here in the room, guys who've spent lots of time and money. And there's a man in the room who told me, I went to him a long time ago, I know he'll remember, I was being impressed to take the Falcon technique. Anybody remember? Yes, some of you do know the Falcon technique. And I said, this is a great thing. And he said to me, there's no magic bullet in exploration. Absolutely true. It's high risk business. And that's what we do. We sell hope, We sell romance. You give me money in the expectation that I'll do certain things with it. But there are three things that I have to do, and it came up again this morning and was very interesting. Is if you give me money, I guarantee to put it in the ground as much as possible. I will have almost no overhead, no fountains in the main hall. And I will give you an out within 3 years. That's the difference, I think, in most places. Hence, that's why we've listed about 15 companies on AIM. Now, what do we do? How do we get around this as non-geologists working on it? And I don't particularly care about the country. What will happen is somebody comes to me with an idea. And I would like to do, I'll focus on that first. They come to me with the idea and they say, I want to invest in gold in Peru. Or I want to invest in tin in Bolivia rather than the DRC. I think it might be better, but we won't go over that. It's also full of Bolivians, which is a problem. It's a very big problem. Makes South Africa look easy. So they say that. And then, so what will we do? We do two things. Because it's our dollars that's going there. We will have a look at the political risk versus the geological risk. And somebody said earlier, the geology doesn't change. And it doesn't. And the assumptions we make is that, okay, if there's some political uncertainty, that it will change over time. Hence my investment in Zimbabwe in 1986 on the basis he couldn't live long. Wasn't that clever? I doubled down in 96 and probably again in about 2006. And Christ, he's still there. Or is it him or is it somebody else? I don't know. Anyway, we retired from 2011. Gave up the fight. So the view very simply here is we will accept higher political risk in return for lower geological risk. Right. What I'll do with the individual, and somebody has to come with me with the idea. I don't have the ideas. And I'll say to them, right, what I'll do is, if you believe in this, I'll fund you for a year. I'll get together the money, which will usually be ourselves. We'll put the money together. I'll wrap it around a company. Example was African Diamonds. Some of you were involved in that. I was trying to get out of Zimbabwe. I went to Botswana to see a couple of coal projects in the Greenstone Belt up near Francistown. They were worse than what I had in Zimbabwe. So I said to the guy, have you anything else? And he had 3 licenses. 3 diamond licenses. So sitting there, drinking tab out at the edge of the desert, we gave him 20% of the first year's company. We established a company. I went out and got the money from people. I think it was about 200,000. Yeah, it was 200,000 pounds. That funded the exploration effort for the first year and a half. This is the ultra high risk money. That's the money that has subsequently made 75 times its investment. I'm saying that to say, I wish it was that. They all don't do that. So what happens at the end of the first year or the first period, if there's something in it, what do we then do? We need more money. Now, the first shares were at 2p. The way this has worked, this is a formula. This is a model of an early stage exploration company. I go back to the initial investors and make them feel good by saying, I'll now sell you the shares at 5p, say, depending on the stage of the market. So they say, well, geez, I made 2.5 times my money, which is, they know it's a lie, and I know it's a lie, but they feel good. Remember what I'm selling? I'm selling hope. Remember, I am not selling reality here. There's no reality of this stuff yet. They've no idea where, most of the ones that came into me had no idea where Botswana was. Why would they? They were Irish. They hardly knew where England was. I think maybe the medical missionaries of Mary or somebody of those, maybe some of them, but they didn't invest with me. So you raise the next tranche. Now, if it gets starting to get serious, if we've anything good, a very important thing to do, high risk, early stage equity capital cannot do the heavy lifting. So you tend to look for an exploration partner that's going to do the heavy work. And in the case of African Diamonds, we got De Beers from 2003 until about 2011. The recent one, Botswana Diamonds, I think James Campbell will be talking to you tomorrow about it, is we have Alrosa in Botswana, who are very interesting. Their first joint venture, they're having more trouble with it than we are. They're a ginormous Russian company, fabulous operation, but they move 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want them to go to 3, there's bedlam. Absolute bedlam. They cannot change anything. Now, big multinationals are bad, as most of you know, But this is as bad as it gets. They're wonderful people, but there is one way of doing it, and it is our way. The fact that they only put up half the money doesn't seem to get across to them. It's still their way. Is it going to work? Who knows? Who knows? We're working with them. Now, we've done this many, many times. In I don't know how many joint ventures we've had over about 40-odd years. I'll explain in a minute how I managed, as a nice academic business school person that was getting abused this morning, whoever abused the business school, in finance, how I ended up in this kind of a business. Because it's where you get your money from. So that's the second stage. Now, say it's working, and say there's an exploration program requiring X, Y, and a Z. If the markets were good, and from about 1986 onwards, we've listed companies. AIM is only in existence since 95. But there was things called the USM and the third market. But we give people a market to trade their shares if they have to. Now, most don't, because they're still following this belief that we know what's going. So each subsequent range of money is higher. If we list, we would never list at more than maybe $1 million or $2 million. So it's not a big scale investment, and it is the type of money you can afford to take a gamble on. We don't get institutions. We don't get sensible investors. We do not want widows and orphans. We just don't want them because they phone you up every day when the price is going down. Why is it going down? Because somebody is selling. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Believe me now, maybe 30 years ago I would have tried to talk to them. Now they're lucky if I talk to them at all. And it's just getting harder and harder. And that's the stage that we are at. That now we are now a listed company. If we are successful, and we've had a few successes which I'll throw at you, we start to get to a bigger market capitalization. And as you go over a certain market cap, probably now 50 million, others in the room might say 100 million before you will attract the big institutions. My money is out of London. And somebody talks about risk, and I'm reminded, listening to it this morning here, in fact, the last speaker talking about South Africa. I think maybe I was just starting as an academic in the 70s, maybe even late 60s. And there's a famous story, became a case study of Rio Tinto, which was still investing in South Africa at the time. Can anybody old enough to remember that? And they had a main board decision to make on a Sunday. Right? And it had all been gone around to the directors, as it does. And they've all got their documents. And this director is coming in a chauffeur-driven car, and he's reading the Financial Times. And on the front page of the Financial Times, riots in somewhere in South Africa. So he goes into the board and he said, we're not investing in a country like that. Look what's happened. Didn't matter that every one of you had spent 5 years' work doing pre-fees, feasibility study, all these assessments. Over the weekend, there'd been a riot. The political risk has changed, and they did not make the investment. It's used as a business study case because, in fact, that's what you're dealing with. You on the ground would go berserk at this, saying, he doesn't know what he's doing. It doesn't matter because money is an orphan. He controls the money. And an awful lot of decisions on most countries are made out of London, Toronto, or Australia. Nowhere else. The risk capital market in Johannesburg, I don't think, has evolved. AIM was wonderful. It's been a disaster. Toronto has been absolute disaster. I'm a member of a very exclusive club, a really exclusive club. None of you want to join it. I'm a member of the 99 Club. The 99 Club are people whose shares have dropped by 99%. And I have multiple memberships. 4. How does that do for you? I'm really only 35. It doesn't look. Shit. I used to have colour. I used to have hair, a lot more of it, and it was a big different colour. And anyway, that's it. But that's the nature of the things. In the last 6 years, it's been a wholesale disaster. AIM has been a write-off. Toronto was worse. There were 1,700 resource companies on the TSXV. 1,700. It's got a bit better. 600 of them had positive working capital. They thought that something like 500 had less than 50,000 working capital, and 600 had negative working capital in the last few years. Disasters. Why? Because there was no money whatsoever. None. It's not capable of getting any money. So this is what has happened to us. So where do we get the money? And I'm going to cause a row here, probably against myself in a minute. The initial money comes is family, yourselves, family and friends. Now, if any of you are into venture capital in the States, you know, your business angels, all this kind of stuff, you know the other word they're called in the States, they're called fools. But I don't like to tell investors family, friends and fools, but because that upsets them if I'm holding out my hand for a check. But this is very high risk. They're going to have to take and I say, look, this is extremely high risk. We're going into the Kalahari Diamonds, we're going to drill for Kalahari to drill for diamonds. Have you any idea how risky that is? But you know yourself. I don't know myself. I'll do the best I can. So what do? We get the guys, we try and hire the best geologists. We try and hire the best technology. How do we work locally to minimize it? We try and get a local partner, always at the exploration stage. We use local management. Why do I use local workers and local management? Because there's only a small bunch of us. There really are 3 of us that have been doing this for the last 20 or 30 years or longer. And so we have to hire local people. Does that work? Yeah, I think it does work. And we'd be very comfortable that I would not go into a country where I do not have a local presence because I don't have a feel for what's going on. Have we been able to survive? We've been able to survive in most of the countries. Give you a bit of background. I was 1969. I came back from the States to lecture in finance in University College Dublin, and after a year I was recruited by a bricklayer who'd found a 20 million tonne zinc deposit in Ireland, and the banks thought he should do discounted cash flows, internal rates of return. This fella couldn't do sums, but he could find mines. My job was to do the big sums. Now, anybody old enough to remember the world in 1969? There were no calculators. You know, you had a kind of stuff. There were no spreadsheets, no Hewlett-Packards. Does anybody in this room know how to do discounted cash flows by hand? Come on, is there anybody? Isn't that fantastic? Nobody. I'd fail you all if you're students. I did, for 2 months, discounted cash flow analysis by hand. They put me into a little room as a consultant in the office in Clontarf, the same room I'm in now. That was 1969, so I'm 48 years in this. And then over the years, I learned how these startups work. And this man, Pat Hughes, had a following. He was a bricklayer, found a deposit in the north, a uranium deposit in the Northwest Territories, came back to Ireland, found a zinc mine, became very big, very profitable, making £1 million a week in the late 60s, and listed it on the New York Stock Exchange. Had a couple of other companies. One of the ones some of you in zinc would know, Tara Mines. Tara Mines. I was one of 2 people in Tara Mines when it was found. I was the other one. I knew nothing about it. The only reason there were 2 of us was it was the only company that had any money to pay us wages. So the geologist got paid and I got paid for doing the sums. It's still the 5th biggest zinc mine in the world. Just discovered another 40 million tonnes. Unbelievable. Fantastic. So Ireland is a big zinc producer. But over about 10 years, you figured out, what do you need to do here? I need followers. I need people I can phone up to say, hey, look, give me some money. We're going to try this. And they won't ask me too much about it because they won't know. Our first venture was in silver recovery. Anybody old enough to remember 1979, the Hunt brothers, they cornered silver. Didn't work. First one was 83 and it worked well. I got about £85,000 from about 15 people, nothing, and it just worked well. 3 companies came out of that. One of them, some of you know, is Kenmare, the big titanium producer in Mozambique now. The other one's a company called Avoca, which is still on AIM. And the third one was Archon, which was another zinc, a real zinc discovery in Ireland, taken over by Lundin. It was too small. It was never really big enough. So the reason I'm boasting is because that was success. And when you have success, the guy said, geez, I should have gone with him. I should have given him the money when he asked me. And we had a philosophy of doing this when times were good. Now I'll bite your hand off at any level. Is we had an inner group. I'd phone you up and say, I need £5,000 or £10,000. That's all you'd ask, right? Maybe 20 or 30 people. That's fine. If you gave it to me, you got asked the next time. If you didn't, you moved to an outer ring. You weren't asked at the 5 or 10,000, you might get in the second financing, not the first. And we were rigid on that. So people got stuck in. Now, those people have done very well. That worked really well in the good times. And we went through 15 of these and we expanded. We got delusions of grandeur. Because not everything is minerals. We started off in Zimbabwe in gold. We still have an operation in Ireland since the 80s, a zinc called Connemara, zinc and gold in Ireland, hurting. So currently we're down to 4. Connemara Mining is listed. Botswana Diamonds is a spin-off. I'll come back to that in a second. We have 2 oil companies. So you wonder about political risk. Have we always got it right? Screwed. We're in Iraq since 1997. We're in Bolivia since 88. And we're in Zimbabwe since 86. And we're in Iran until we had to get out of Iran. Why did we get out of Iran? Not because the people weren't great. They're lovely. Is Iran prospective? Unbelievably prospective. You have no idea how prospective is. It's a thing called the Tethyan Belt. Unexplored. Every metal known to man. Massive, massive copper, base metals. The biggest zinc deposit in the world is Methiabad. Lots of gold. The trouble is the people. Minor weakness. We had to get out because of US sanctions, not because of the Iranians who were very good to us. US sanctions meant that no institution with a US connection or no bank with a US connection will trade with you, will deal with you. And that's the case today. I went to Iran last year. We've kept our companies there. They're not listed anymore. We've kept them. And when I arrived back, 5 days previously, the US Congress had passed a law saying anybody being in Iraq or Iran for the previous 5 years now required visas. So my non-visa entry is gone. So I had to queue up with all the peasants, believe me, in the rain. Unbelievable. I'm 100 years old. And I'm standing here with poor Somalians who've been caught, Irish guys who've overstayed their things, and the lashing rain at 8:30 outside the embassy with my papers. I wasn't impressed at all. But it had to be done or I can't get into the States. Had to go through that. So these are kind of non-things. Now, let me come back a little bit to the company and to where we go. So we started in 86 with that. We went very rapidly to South America. Then loads of money was available to us because you were successful. The first one was African Gold. It's currently known as, anybody know what it's called? Still alive. It's called Asa Resources now. It's still in Zimbabwe. It was not a success. The second one was Panandian Resources. It was sold in 2009 to Petrominerales because it had gone from silver into oil and gas, Canadian company. Kenmare, we stayed in, connected with it through various iterations until 2001. We have nothing more to do with that now. Again, the initial investor in Kenmare, you could have done all right. African Diamonds was probably our best. Over the 46 or 47 years, we've had 3 big hits, that's all. That's a long time to be gambling. 3 big hits. Tara Mines, the shares went from 2 and 6, let's say from 15 cents to $50. Now, did anybody sell at $50? Of course they didn't. African Diamonds went from 2p to £1.80, 90 times. Currently, if you've held on to them, because it's now Lucara, one of the joys, the best thing that's ever happened to me in 46 years, I never have dividends. If I get a dividend, there's something wrong. The companies I deal with don't pay dividends ever. There was a 45 cent a share dividend in Lucara. So you pay 2p for your share and you got a 45 cent dividend. My colleagues, my initial investors, a lot of them family who had held on, don't know what to do with the money. This money, and in some cases substantial sums of money, have come to them and they say, is this real? You know, because they never in their life got a dividend from anything I've been associated with. Never. What do? You sell. You sell. If you sell. Remember, everybody in this room is a good buyer. Every one of you is a good buyer. There's almost no good sellers. You're all good buyers, and I was a very good seller for years. Now I'm a lousy seller. I have a 36-year-old son who's not as financially skilled as my 40-year-old, and yet he's a better seller. He trades the markets, and he's just very good. He's very good, knows. I must have got it from his mother or his father, whoever that might be. But anyway, I'm supposed to. I know who his mother is because I saw it. It's true. These things are true. These things are true. Anyway, where was I? I was at the situation of that. African Diamonds was a spin-off to Botswana Diamonds, so we're going to do the same again. But look what we've done. We've floated it off. It's on AIM. We raised the money. We've got some good projects. We've got some very good people. James will be speaking to you tomorrow. And, you know, we reduced the risk that way, but the risk is still very high. I'll finish off now by saying the following. Bulls make money, right? Bears make money. Stags, you know, the stag is a guy who, when a company is listed, you buy to sell. They make money, but pigs make nothing. My best friend has made a lot of money with me because he's not restricted on selling his shares. So the odd time he loses, he says, that's GFG. Greed, effing greed. And that's the reason he doesn't make the money. So the opportunities are there. Unfortunately for South Africans, the world is our oyster. There are lots and lots of places I can go. I need clear title when I'm giving you the money. I need to be sure that I own it, or at least I have rights to it. And it is surprising that more countries other than South Africa have problems. A lot of the countries give you title but won't give you a guarantee to give you a production license from an exploration license. And that's a big issue. Is a huge issue. And that's in Europe as well. That's not just South Africa. It was that way in Ireland for about 20 or 30 years until we eventually got across them saying, guys, why would we give you money if you give our discovery to somebody else? Now, it takes a while for them to get their heads, but the opportunities are there. And I think the future looks, where I am, it still looks very good with many things to do. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for holding on. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, John. Thank you very much. Amazing.
Oh.
I mean, true legendary stuff. I could hear a pin drop the whole time. I wish we could really absorb such wisdom and then live accordingly, but sometimes we have to make our own mistakes. So
that's true.
Smile from there and see us make some of